Rain patters against the windshield as I pull up to the house, headlights slicing through the early autumn dusk. My phone buzzes in the cup holder. I already know who it is. Running late. Grabbing a drink with him. That's the third time this week. I exhale, pressing my lips together, willing myself not to feel anything. It's just a drink. Just another late night. But something about the routine, the predictability of it, makes my stomach turn. I kill the engine, reaching for my bag when something shifts in my periphery. A shadow moves behind the curtain in the upstairs window. My breath catches. It's too fast, too fluid to be nothing. I sit frozen for a second, heart hammering, then shake it off. Maybe it's a trick of the light. The porch creaks under my steps as I push the door open. The house is quiet, but the air feels wrong. Too still, too expectant. I drop my keys onto the counter, straining to hear beyond the hum of the fridge. Then sound. A door clicking shut. My stomach tightens. The terrace. I hurry toward the back, flinging open the glass door, stepping onto the damp wooden deck. The night swallows me whole. Silence. No footsteps. No voices. Just the wind whispering through the trees. The smell of coffee lingers as I set down his plate. He barely glances up, scrolling through his phone, fork tapping idly against the table. I watch him, searching for something, anything, that feels familiar. You've been seeing him a lot lately, I say, keeping my voice light. He swallows, shrugs. He's been going through some stuff. His answer is vague, rehearsed. I wait for more, but he just checks his watch like the conversation is already over. Later, I stop by the shop to drop off his lunch, a habit from years ago that used to mean something. The garage door is half open, the smell of oil and metal thick in the air. And then he's there, his friend, leaning against the workbench, wiping grease from his hands. Our eyes meet. Just a second too long. Hey, he says, voice even, but there's something unreadable in his face. I nod, feeling warmth creep up my neck, hating myself for noticing. That night my phone buzzes. Late again. Don't wait up. Something in my chest tightens. It shouldn't bother me. But it does. The house feels too quiet, the kind that settles deep in your bones. I try to focus on the TV, but my mind drifts, fingers tapping against the couch. Another late night. Another empty space beside me. I grab my jacket, deciding a walk might clear my head. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of cut grass and distant rain. I round the corner and nearly collide with him. He steps back, hands raised in mock surrender, a grin tugging at his lips. Didn't mean to scare you. I exhale, laughing despite myself. The conversation flows easily, like slipping into something familiar. He teases me about my terrible parking, I mock his oil-stained hands. For a moment it feels natural, effortless. Then, without thinking, he reaches out, tucks a loose strand of hair behind my ear. My breath catches. The space between us shifts, tightens. Before I can process it, his lips brush mine, light, brief, but electric. We freeze, reality crashing back. His jaw clenches, eyes dark with something unreadable. But neither of us finishes. We step back. Too far. Too close. And then we walk away. The days blur together, a cycle of silence and routine. My husband moves through the house like a shadow, present but distant, his conversations short, his attention elsewhere. He kisses my cheek in the mornings out of habit, but his mind is already gone before he steps out the door. I tell myself it has nothing to do with me, that it's just work, stress, life. But something in me knows better. I should feel relieved. Should be grateful that his distance makes my guilt easier to carry. But it doesn't. And then there's him. No messages. No calls. Not even a glance when I drop by the shop. He's there, of course, talking to my husband, laughing at something only they understand. But not once does he look in my direction. It shouldn't bother me. It shouldn't make my chest tighten or my hands itch to reach for my phone. I replay the moment in my head, telling myself it meant nothing. But late at night, when the house is dark and my husband sleeps beside me, I catch myself wondering if he thinks about it too. The invitation catches me off guard. A quiet dinner, just the two of us. No excuses, no phone calls pulling him away. He watches me across the table, his gaze heavier than it's been in months. There's something different in the way he leans in, the way his fingers graze my wrist, lingering just a second too long. For the first time in what feels like forever, he's present. I should feel relief. I should feel something real. Later, in the dim light of our bedroom, he kisses me the way he used to, slow, deliberate, as if trying to remind me of something we lost. His hands are familiar, his breath warm against my skin, and for a fleeting second I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this is what I've been needing. But as his lips press against mine, an image flashes. Another touch, another moment, another man. My chest tightens. Guilt coils deep. His embrace is firm, but all I feel is distance. I close my eyes, forcing myself to stay, but the truth settles like a stone in my gut. This isn't real. Not anymore. The cafe is small, warm, filled with the quiet hum of conversation and the clinking of cups. I didn't expect to see him here. He's leaning against the counter, fingers drumming absently, eyes scanning the menu like he doesn't already know what he wants. When he notices me, his body stiffens just slightly, a hesitation so brief most people wouldn't catch it. But I do. He nods, polite, distant, the way someone does when they're pretending nothing ever happened. I should do the same. Instead, I hold his gaze a second too long, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. His jaw tightens. His grip on the coffee cup is just a little too firm. I wonder if he can hear my heartbeat from across the room. Then the door chimes. My husband. The moment shatters instantly. My stomach knots as he walks toward me, oblivious, dropping a kiss on my cheek. I force a smile, ignoring the heat creeping up my neck. Across the room, his friend exhales slowly, looking away. I do the same, but the air still feels charged, like something waiting to unravel. The message comes late, just 3 words, but they send my pulse into overdrive. We need to talk. I stare at the screen, debating, knowing I should ignore it. But I don't. Instead, I find myself slipping into my jacket, keys already in hand before I can think twice. We meet at a quiet park on the edge of town, away from familiar streets, away from the weight of expectations. He's already there, hands shoved deep into his pockets, his posture tense. This has to stop, he says, but there's no conviction behind it, only a weariness that mirrors my own. I nod, knowing he's right, knowing this can't lead anywhere good. But then he exhales sharply, dragging a hand through his hair. I can't stop thinking about it, he admits, voice low, like he hates himself for saying it. The space between us feels too small. I take a step back, but he doesn't. My breath catches. I should leave. I should turn around. But my feet stay rooted because the truth is I don't want to go. Sleep had become a luxury she no longer had. Every night, the house was alive with noise, music vibrating through the thin walls, the rapid clicking of a controller, the occasional curse muttered under his breath. No matter how tightly she shut her eyes, she could still hear it. My stepson fed my every night asterisk, her sleep schedule that is. She had finally snapped one morning, dragging herself into the kitchen, dark circles under her eyes. You have to cut it out, she said, voice flat with exhaustion. He blinked at her, genuinely surprised, then nodded. That night, silence wrapped around the house like a long-lost comfort. For the first time in weeks she slept. Now, standing in the dim glow of the living room, she felt a different kind of tension. He was too close, his voice lower than before, words laced with something unspoken. She should have walked away, but she didn't. The moment stretched, her pulse hammering as he reached out. The front door swung open. Her husband stood in the doorway. Silence. Heavy. Unforgiving. And then, in a heartbeat, the man in front of her moved. A kiss, rash, reckless, collided with her lips. Her husband didn't say a word. He just turned and walked out. She waits for the explosion, the yelling, the accusations, but they never come. Her husband moves through the house in silence, methodical, almost robotic. He grabs a duffel bag from the closet, tossing in clothes without looking at her. She stands frozen in the doorway, throat dry, pulse hammering. Please, can we just talk? Her voice is barely above a whisper, but he doesn't stop. Doesn't even glance her way. The silence is worse than shouting. Worse than rage. It's final. She steps closer, reaching for him, but he pulls away before she can touch him. Don't, he says, voice hollow, drained of everything that once made it his. That single word cuts deeper than anything he could have screamed. The front door opens. Closes. He's gone. She stands in the empty house, staring at the space he left behind, the air thick with something unbearable. Her phone buzzes. A message. She already knows who it's from before she looks. I'm sorry. I'm leaving for a while. She exhales sharply. A bitter laugh escapes. Now she's the one left behind. The house is too quiet. Not the comfortable silence of early mornings or lazy Sundays, but the kind that feels like a weight pressing down on her chest. She moves through the empty rooms like a ghost, every sound amplified. Her footsteps against the hardwood, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of a chair as she sinks into it. A box of old photos sits in front of her, the edges worn from years of handling. She flips through them one by one. Smiling faces. Laughter frozen in time. A woman who looks like her but isn't. She doesn't recognize herself anymore. Doesn't recognize the life she once had. She lost them both. One walked away without a word. The other left with an apology that meant nothing. And now she's here alone, trapped in the aftermath of choices she can't undo. She runs her fingers over a picture of her husband, then another of his friend. A lump rises in her throat, but she swallows it down. The worst part? She doesn't even know which loss hurts more.